What's happening, guys? Call of Duty Black Ops Kid here, coming at you with another video. Today is a very interesting day. We're actually reviewing another graphics card. Tell which one it is. This one I'm holding is the Radeon Rx Vega 56. And this was, I think, AMD's response towards, I think it was trying to take down the 1050 or the 1080s, I think. Or 1070s. I think it was 1070. This is a RX 56 8GB. And this is I think this is OEM blower style model. These are actually pretty sought after cards for people going on budgets. And I bought this in a whole system, which I actually have a video coming very soon to the channel. And this is a great ass card. And now I'm curious, how well does it stack up in 2020? I already know it's a blower style, so this thing is going to be loud as hell, but I'm excited to see how this stacks up. This card is unlike any other AMD card too, because it has two 8-pin connectors right here. Basically kind of in ties with like the later super models from NVIDIA, which is kind of odd. And for this to work, I actually had to plug in another 8. I actually had to plug in another cord just for the 8-pin. And so here it is in the system. We should be able to hit Alt R, because we should, now the system, I have both the Radeon software and NVIDIA, so it should just boot up and work just fine now. In the settings, make sure we're up to date, and it's not. So we're gonna get those drivers all updated, and see GPU, Radeon RX Vega, 8 gigs, HBM2 800 megahertz. Interesting. Core clock is 1590 megahertz, 409 gigabytes per second high bandwidth. Memory bit width is 1.6 gigabytes per second. And it's in my AMD Ryzen 5 2600X and 32 gigabytes of RAM. Alright, so we're getting into the benchmarks here. As you can see, as I started the benchmarking out, it started at about 66 degrees Celsius and progressively moved up to about 80 to 85 degrees. This card just runs hot. On GTA 5, MSAA 8 times, the average frame rate was 47.2 frames per second with a 1% low of 35.4 and a 0.1% low of 32.5. You can see the CPU or the graphics card temperature reaching to 77 degrees and 98% utilization. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. I didn't realize that during all this stuff, my RAM was only at 800 megahertz. Not exactly sure why that is, so that might have affected some of these performance scores, or it could just be a random inquisition. Going to MSAA turned off, we do see a boost in performance of FPS here to an average of 70 frames per second with a 1% low of 49 frames per second and a 0.1% low of 35 frames per second. This did improve frames significantly. Vehicles do sometimes affect the FPS performance, but on MSAA turned off, it doesn't seem to be that way. Also, I don't know how to drive helicopters in GTA 5 with a keyboard and mouse, so that will be some of the things we have to mess around with later. As you can see, you do see it jump to around 84 degrees Celsius, which is pretty much where this card ends up at. You do see like maybe 86, but these blower styles are definitely really hot. Always pretty hot. Going to Apex Legends, it's 84 degrees Celsius coming in and dropping it at about 100 frames per second. This is with everything turned on, max settings. And we have weird 1% lows and 0.1% lows on this, with the 0.1% low being 1.3. And there were some weird stutters here and there. 7.2 frames per second was the 1%, with a average frame rate of 92.9 frames per second. Me lasering some kids that were dead. And yeah, this game was actually pretty fun to play. And honestly, on this, over 100 frames, Easily playable. Very easily playable. Also, very smooth. There was like one or two hiccups. As you can see, the GPU at 84 degrees Celsius. And yeah, pretty crazy stuff here. On CsGo, I was actually going off with this Scar H. I've never used this thing before, ever. This is the first match with me using it. I get the double right here as well. The average frame rate on CsGo is 179 frames per second. And I couldn't get for whatever reason, the display was turned off for this game. Not exactly sure why. Our minimum frame rate was 20.1%, or 20.1 frames per second, with a maximum frame rate of 248.6 frames per second. 1% low was 30.6, and a 0.1% low was 20.1. Very easily beats 144 frames per second on max settings on CsGo. And then just enjoy the little montage and carnage before we move on to our next game. The Outer Worlds is a game I keep coming back and forth to, playing around. The GPU temp set pretty relatively decent here at 78 to 77 degrees Celsius. The average frame rates on max settings at 1080p, average frame rate was 61.1 frames per second. The minimum frame rate was 46.7 frames per second, and a maximum was 72.7, with a 1% low of 24.2, a 0.1% at 4.4 frames per second. It's been a minute since I played this game, and I'm playing on Supernova difficulty, and yeah, it's pretty crazy, this game. Pretty fun, though. I had a lot of fun playing it again, and it's been a minute, and the game was extremely smooth, and you do see some 80 degrees temperatures on the GPU here. What? On Modern Warfare, we got a great frame rate. Just playing some plunder and getting into some engagements and fun. 85 degrees Celsius on top of this graphics card. With it being 85.5 frames per second on average, a maximum frame rate of 134.1 frames, probably me looking at a rock or something. 1% low, 49 frames per second, and a 0.1% of 5.6. Sometimes I don't know why the 1% lows and 0.1% lows are so low, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. I didn't realize my RAM was only at 800 megahertz. I'm not sure why this is. Maybe it was a graphical error because I'm always running it at max 3200 megahertz speed. So not exactly sure what that's all about. But the game ran extremely smooth and ran fun and great. I'm also recording these with the AMD FreeSync software.
So yeah, that was the testing. It was very interesting testing out the Vega 56. I've heard a lot of good things about the Vega 56, the Vega 64, all those cards. And this is like my first ever blower style that I've ever really worked with, and it's been a real inspiring video. Not so long ago, we just did the RX 580 versus the 1070, which, surprise, surprise, the 580 lost. But the 1070 is really strong, even compared to the Vega 56. Only losing by like 10% in most cases, and you can find Vega 56s for fairly decent prices. A couple I found for like $130 on some, but some of them, of course, are like like $200. And if you're gonna spend $200, you might as well buy a 1070. You're getting a little bit more performance, and the card runs a lot cooler. Yeah, and so honestly, this has been a great idea. The Vega 56 definitely still holds its own in a lot of titles, even in 2020. Of course, it's a Vega 56, it's a $200 graphics card. But yeah, I mean, it's a great card. Definitely make sure that the person you're buying it from is not super dirty, because this card, even still now, I'm blowing air into it and it's still splaying dust everywhere up until this day. So I'll have a video on that. Make sure you guys check it out in the description below. That video And I'll see you guys in the next one. We'll do some more testing when it comes down to the Vega 56 versus the 1070 here soon. So thanks guys for watching. See you later. Bye.